Hi guys, how have you been? Well, I haven't been doing so great because for the last 2 weeks I've been trying to come up with something to create from imagination and I really struggled. I tried doing some creative exercises, drawing a few things that I like, practicing, and then when it came time to sit down and create something from my mind, I was completely stuck. But one fateful day, after sitting down for about 4 hours and just about ready to throw in the towel, I said to myself that, you know what? I just need to put the paint down, put the paper down, and just start painting and let it come to me, which is something I don't think I've ever really done. Now, even after that self pep talk, it was still very hard for me to begin because I'm an overthinker, and so just putting down paint, I'm gonna think about it a lot. Which color to use? What am I creating? I can't just start painting and I don't know what I'm doing. What if I make a mistake? What if I need to take a different direction? I didn't even want to film it because I was like, it's not gonna look great. But I psyched myself and said, well, just video in case it's something you want to share. I started with the color blue on a whim because I felt like blue is a versatile color that can be the sky or the ocean or even the backdrop for a portrait. But even while painting, it started to look like maybe a sky. So I was going for a sky. But as I was blending it down, I accidentally put a darker blue at the bottom and then I said, okay, it's fine. It could be an ocean. It could be a sky and an ocean. So I went with that. Now, even at this point where I clearly had a sky and an ocean, I still wasn't sure what I was going for. But once I started to see it, I thought, the blue is pretty. It would be nice with some really pretty clouds, something light and fluffy. But this time, I decided to experiment with not just putting white clouds, but how about purple clouds? How about pink clouds? And see what it could look like. While I work on painting the clouds, I wanted to share this poem that I recently discovered, which was written by William Wordsworth. This poem is called I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, which is perfect for this video point. Ahem. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils. By this point, I started to think about the color palette that I wanted to use for my painting. I've spoken about color palette before and I have said that it's a bit of a weakness because I don't give it much forethought. Or when I do think about it, I'm not really strict about my color palette. I end up using different colors that I'm not supposed to use or different hues that I'm not supposed to use. But this time, while I was painting, I decided that my theme should be girly, maybe light colors, pastels, blue and pink and purple, maybe a bit of teal. I was just thinking about some of those Pinterest boards that I have where I've created these girly palettes and I've always thought that I would like to create a painting or an art piece using those palettes because they really appeal to me. So I decided to try it out this time. At this point, all I really knew was that I was painting the sky and I was painting the ocean. I wasn't really sure where I was going next or if I was gonna do anything else. But I knew that the painting would be empty without a subject or a focal point. I mean, I could have just left it like this, but I felt like it needed something more. So I did about an hour or two of research and thinking and brainstorming until I came up with the perfect thing that I felt would match my painting. And if anything else, it did match how I felt about it. You probably can't tell from my very pale outline, but I'm attempting to draw a girl on a surfboard. And I'm erasing it a million times and re-sketching because I am struggling with doing the card posture. And I had a posture in my mind which was a bit slumped over and just relaxed, not necessarily too poised, but I wanted it to look very natural. Just a girl on a surfboard. By the way, if you are a new artist and you also struggle with poses, or maybe you just want to get some practice, then a good place to start would be Line of Action or Posemaniac or even Proco.com. Those three websites do offer free resources and lots of examples where you can practice different postures from real models or fake anatomies. And those websites are not sponsors, they're genuinely websites that I have used and currently do use when I'm practicing in my sketchbook. I also find it fun to draw poses from music videos where the artist is dancing a lot. So if you want to keep it fun, you can also do that. But those three websites really do offer lots of resources for learning poses and getting your practice in. Alright, back to the painting. So filling in her skin color in areas where her skin is exposed. And then I went in and added a very light pink, very light pink, brownish color on her skin where the light from the sky hits her skin. And since she is sitting, well, we're seeing her from behind, I was trying to be very intentional about where I let that light show. And of course, I went in and added some dark areas in her back since that's where the shadow would be the most. And unfortunately, guys, my battery died. And I didn't realize. I realized really late after I'd already painted her suit and her hair and even the board. Oh my god. I felt really bad, but I just used the opportunity to take a break from it since I didn't really take a break from the art piece since it started only took like research breaks. So I took a break, allowed my device to charge, and got back to it. So next I mixed some purple, blue, and a bit of red and put that close to the horizon of the sea to give the painting some dimension and contrast because I felt like it was a bit flat and the sky blended in too much with the ocean. And I felt like adding that would give the sea more depth. And also, you know, when you do look at the ocean, it does look darker closer to the horizon because the water is deeper out there. Or at least that's what I think the reasoning is it for. I may be wrong. Now doing this did sort of cause me to undo some of the things I did before, like the fact that I had added a light pink over the water. It was like a pink glaze that I had added over the water before I even painted the girl. So painting the that violet color at the horizon is sort of undoing all of that work, but I felt like it was very necessary. And I added those brown underneath her feet because I wanted to show that vague reflection of her foot in the water. It's not necessarily her reflection, but you can vaguely see through the water and see her foot in the water. And it's very distorted because, you know, you don't really see properly in the water unless it's extremely clear. And in this case, it's not necessarily clear. And then I added a slight reflection of her body in the water. I wasn't sure if that was completely accurate because thinking about it, I don't necessarily see my reflection in the ocean, but I do see it in a pool. I wasn't sure if it was very accurate, but I went with it just to see how I'd feel about it. And remember, this is a painting about being free and just doing what I feel is right in the moment. So I just said, you know what, let's go with it. And of course, adding those very small ripples or waves in the water because it wouldn't be an ocean without it. By the way, have you noticed that almost all of my videos have some form of water or liquid element in it? It was truly not intentional because, as I have mentioned in one of my previous videos, water is not something that I am comfortable with painting, but it is the my most favorite aspect of any painting. When I see a painting, I'm always mesmerized by water, river, drops of water. It's so calming to me. So I guess that's why I always gravitate to incorporating some form of water element into my art pieces. And here I am highlighting the areas where the light hits her bathing suit, and then I go in and add a tint of pink because, like I said, the whole painting is like a pink purple theme going on. And let's just imagine that the sky is like a pink sunset, and so everything is just given a pink light. Hence the reason why that light on her bathing suit is a bit pink rather than white. And now I'm focusing on the areas of light again. I added in that very bright light on the surfing board, adding those light reflections on the ocean to give it that water look, because what's water without some light reflection, really? I realized later through observation that her skin would appear darker when it is wet, so I added that darker brown in the areas where her legs was submerged in the water. And then I would later add some darker gray to her bathing suit where the bottom of it submerged in the water as well. I decided to go in again with my white paint and tackle those pink clouds. I added some white areas to give the sky a more light and bright look, and also give the clouds a more three-dimensional feel and fluffy feel rather than this flat purple or flat pink. Now by this point I was pretty satisfied with my painting, but I was struck with this idea to give the sky a starry, dreamlike feel. And to accomplish this, I decided to use the splatter technique, which is basically when you wet your paintbrush with the paint and just splatter it across the painting. I didn't want any of the white splatters to go in the sea or on the girl's head, so I used a paper to cover the ocean, and of course a little jar that I found to cover the girl's head, which was the perfect fit for her actually. And I know it barely shows in the camera, but it looks really good to me. And I went in with my paintbrush and just made some of those little splatters more bright, so it had this starry, dreamy look. And before I knew it, I was at the point where I was wrapping up and ready to sign my name and pack up all my stuff. There's always something very satisfying about removing that paint from the side of the art piece. It just makes the painting look so much better and neater and refined. Now, I noticed that at the bottom of my painting, for some reason, I did not completely paint down to the bottom. I had left some areas a bit pale, so I decided to go back in and try and fill out those areas with paint so that it does come down to the bottom border of the painting. But I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I don't think I should have done that because as you can see, I made it go over to the left and the right of the border. I completely messed up the borders. And I didn't even realize until the last minute when it was actually done, it was already messed up. I tried to go in with a white gelling pen that I had to kind of try and conceal it, but it didn't really work out. I know you can't see my face, but I was pretty disappointed in myself for doing that. I could not believe I just messed up the painting. I felt like at this point I should have just left it alone from the get go and just not touch it. But I went ahead and tried to fix something only to mess up something else. It didn't look as bright in the camera, but I could see it. I saw it with my plain eyes. I couldn't believe I did that. I tried for the third time to try and conceal it with the white gelling pen. I knew it wouldn't completely get it out or hide it, but at the very least, allow it to be paler. And there we have it. I won't lie, I was a bit disappointed with myself for messing that up, but overall, I was still pretty pleased with the outcome. In total, this painting took me 3.5 hours to complete, which is actually the shortest time I've ever taken to complete any painting. I'm also really proud of myself for taking that risk. Putting that first brush stroke on the paper without having a clue what I was going to create is really something new for me. I don't think I've ever really done that. And finally, I'm really proud of myself for really choosing a nice color palette even though I didn't know what I was painting. I can't believe I really just painted something that looked so cohesive. And I'm proud of myself for taking that risk of choosing a mustard yellow surfing board that actually it's a contrast to the water and it pulls your eyes to the girl. That was really cool and I'm proud of myself for actually coming up with that. Well, those were my thoughts, but I'd still love to hear yours, so let me know in the comments below what you think. Also, if you enjoyed this video, then let me know by leaving a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of my art, whether they're good or bad, then subscribe. Bye!